Alright folks, today I'm going to be showing you how I made the Magnum from Halo Reach, which is this thing from this game. My version of it, as you just saw a minute ago, came out to be this right here. And look at that, it's got LEDs and everything. And I'll show you exactly how I did that. And to actually turn the LEDs on and off, you take the top off the slider like that, and the switch is right there. So flick it, and the LEDs turn off. Oh, and the magazine detaches too. So, like with every pistol I make, I had to start with the kind of base, and then just add pieces on top of that until it was done. So for the shape of said base, I used 2 layers of 10mm foam, in the shape of this part of the Magnum right here. And because I wanted there to be LEDs in this thing, so let me shed some light on this situation.
Make it quick, would ya?
And to help me keep track of what wires go where, I had to kind of twist them all up. Once that was done, I just soldered all the LED lights directly to the cables, cut off the excess, and then used electrical tape on the LEDs to prevent short circuiting. After a couple hours and connecting the wires to the power source, which is a 9-volt battery, and adding a switch so I can turn the thing on and off whenever I want, the entire circuit was complete. To make room for the magazine, because I wanted to make it detachable, I cut out a kind of slot out of the 10mm foam that I used for the base of the prop, and then kind of cut that piece in half in this manner. Then I took one of those halves and then just glued it right back where it was. The magazine itself is just a bunch of pieces of 4mm foam, both for the base structure and all the detail. And this part is encased in Worbla thermoplastic because it doesn't have any internal structure and I didn't want it to be all flimsy. And now because the handle of the prop's going to be hollow, that will also be flimsy, so I needed to give that some Worbla as well. There's also a little magnet to keep the Magnum's magazine in place, but it actually wasn't necessary. Friction's enough to keep it in. And with that done, and all the cables are now in place, I glued the 2 layers of 10mm foam together, and now I've got the whole base. Next thing to do at that point was just some detail to put on, and for that I used 4mm and 2mm pieces. Now for this thing beneath the barrel, I had to thread some cables to that too. It's got 3 LEDs in it, but the piece itself is a chunk of 3 layers of 10mm foam, and the details on the side I just made using 2mm foam. Next thing to do after that was the guard, I guess. Because of how thin it is, making it just out of foam would be a bad idea. It would be flimsy. So I bent a steel rod and cut it to size, cut out a socket for it, glued it in, encased the whole thing in Worbla just for good measure, and glued it in place just like that.
Just like that.
Looking good so far. It's all coming together. Just be on your guard. Mistakes get made in cosplay all the time. Now for this piece on top of the barrel, it's a bit thicker than the rest of the gun is. So on each side I added an additional layer of 10mm foam, and it's also got these bevels on top. So I did a rough cut of the bevels using my box knife, and sanded it down with the Dremel, as always. There's also quite a lot of screws on this thing. Some of them I cut little circles out of 2mm foam, and some of them I just used a wood burner and pressed it in vertically. Now the next thing to do were these, the handle scales. I cut those out using a piece of 4mm foam, and they're also kind of textured with like this diamond pattern. So to get that I took an X-Acto knife and scored all the lines on it, because when you heat up foam, it shrinks. And this shrinking effect causes any cuts you make in it to expand. So I took my heat gun and did just that for those handle scales, making that diamond pattern a heck of a lot more prominent. And then the very last thing to do at this point was the slider. Because this was really the only place for that battery compartment to go, I made the kind of front piece of the slider more or less hollow. There's still a chunk of foam in there so that the magnet can fit in there. As for the back of the slider, I made that using 3 layers of 10mm foam, and all the detail I made using 2mm and 4mm foam. And I made sure the back of the slider was put in a certain spot so that the front piece can slide right in there nice and snug. And check it out, the glorious LEDs work like a charm. And at this point the construction was complete. Next thing to do was to prime and paint. For the primer I used 2 coats of black PlastiDip, as always. And for most of the top half of the Magnum, I gave it 1 coat of metallic silver. And for everything else except the handle scales, I gave 1 coat of 30% gray. Then to make all the edges pop out, I added some highlights, and the very last thing to do was kind of that yellow stripe on the top of the barrel there. So I put some painter's tape to make the yellow part have an edge, and then I just kind of stippled on some yellow and gave it a gradient effect. And now that the paint job is complete, it was time to seal it. And for that I just used 1 coat of matte Mod Podge. And we are done! That's my Magnum from Halo Reach. My goodness, the LEDs just give it so much character, don't you think? But getting those LEDs in there made this pretty tricky to make. But yeah, for this gun, I thought it'd be worth a shot. But it came to fruition in the end, and I'm pretty happy with it. If you would like me to make one of these for you, there's a link in the video description that'll take you to my Etsy shop. You can just go ahead and order one, or contact me and we'll go from there. And any feedback you have for my content, or anything you want me to make in the future, the comment section is the place to go for that. But yeah, thanks so much for watching my video, friend. More subscriptions are always nice, but that's up to you. And I'm out. I'll see you in the next build.